call to order our working meeting for today, August 24th. Lori, would you like to take roll?
Sure. Mrs. Berger?
Here.
Dr. Savignano?
Here.
Mrs. Sullivan? Here. Reverend Willis?
Here. And Melanie should be joining us shortly, so we can get started with, you want to do public comment first? Is that what you
Yeah, gentlemen, we have a board member stuck in traffic on our way. I'm going to start with the public, a couple of pre-submitted questions, if that's okay with you guys, give them a chance to make it. First one was from Ann and Matt Thompson, and it was just a public support of thanks to the board for the state championship rings for the band. I appreciate that as well, and I know you've received several. I've sent you a couple. I do think that's a great thing that the board does for our kids.
When did they officially get them?
I think they officially got them, last week, 2 weeks ago?
Last week.
Yeah, so anyway, they were really nice. I think they turned out well. I do like the fact that we do that for our students. So thanks to Ann and Matt. We also had 2 questions submitted. And the first was, what type of training is to provided to teachers to adequately educate via online curriculum? So I have to answer this from a board standpoint first. I mean, as a board, with the amendment to the calendar, you provided 7 work days to staff to be able to plan and prepare for those days. So from the board level, that was kind of our action. I know from each school they've done Google trainings for the staff. They've also worked on best practices, both as groups from admin and from departments. And then Mr. Lusk has done several trainings as well. But to get into those details, I think that we would have to, the submitter of this question would have to ask each building level to know exactly what's happened from the standpoint. But from a board standpoint, we provided transition time on both cycles. At the spring, we gave 5 days of preparation, which wasn't, don't get me wrong, wasn't something amazing, but it at least allowed a smoother transition. And then getting into this year, we gave 7 work days. Second question was, what is the vetting for new teacher hires? Do you review their social media? Please explain. I mean, really from hiring standpoint, from an HR standpoint, we follow all the state guidelines for hiring processes, and have board policies governing every one of those. So obviously we look at many different things, but we follow all the guidelines from a state process. And sometimes social media gets really interesting because what one person sees as a problem, another person sees as a tribute. So that becomes a very dicey standpoint. So that was the public questions. Bought a couple minutes, but I think we can go ahead and move into our presentation.
Okay.
Well, first, I'd like to thank Dr. Stacy and Madam Chairman, the members of the board, for allowing us to be here tonight. For those in the audience, my name is Anthony Strong with Compass Municipal Advisors out of Lexington. We're financial advisors that work with school districts. And I know today was your first day of school, and as was for many districts in northern Kentucky. I know that it wasn't the day that you wanted for children. But as a former superintendent, most of you know that's been my background. I have to applaud you and Dr. Stacy for the effort that y'all made early on, trying to make sure that we had as much in-person instruction. I don't think anybody worked any harder in the region than Dr. Stacy in trying to advocate for their students in that role as a superintendent. And it's a difficult decision. I get it. I've told Dr. Stacy many times, I kind of teasingly say, I'm glad I'm a retired superintendent rather than current superintendent, but I do have a lot of empathy and sympathy for what y'all have gone through, and it's been some difficult times during this past 6 or 7 months, and hopefully things will get better. Saw a lot of positive comments on social media today, some from northern Kentucky and all over, about how changes were working, and hopefully that it's going to be a good thing for students as we move forward. So again, thank you for the work that you do as board members for the students here. You know, also in our business, there's been a lot of changes in the last couple of years too, in terms of the role of financial advisors. You know, changes in the market, changes in structures and how things work. And I know most of you know me, having been working for Ross Sinclair and Associates out of Cincinnati and Lexington, and that entity is no longer in business as a municipal advisor, financial advisor. They've spun that company off to a different company name and structure in terms of what they're working. Another player in this market, Hilliard Lyons, a big player in the state, was bought out by Baird, R.W. Baird. So what I would consider the top three in the state, you know, Compass has been the one that has been the mainstay for the last 2 or 3 years in terms of have not had major changes in their business structure and how they do that. When Ross Sinclair changed, I had an opportunity to go with them, but it also gave me an opportunity to look at the businesses and how different companies structured, how they were working in terms of helping school districts. And what I found is that, you know, Compass provides a unique opportunity in being able to do some other innovative things that maybe I hadn't seen before during my 14 years as a superintendent. So, you know, in watching some of Dr. Stacy's videos during this stuff, talking about the Beechwood way, how you're focusing on students and learners and leaders excelling in the community, I think a lot of what Compass's core beliefs are is doing that same, focusing on student learning and the community and staff so that we help provide you with the resources that you need to accomplish those. And hopefully tonight that's what our presentation is going to give you. And to do most of the presentation tonight, I'm going to introduce Michael George, who's sitting to my immediate right, who is the Managing Director in our Lexington office, and then R.J. Palmer, who's Senior Vice President in our office. So I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you, Anthony, and I'll echo what Anthony said. We appreciate, obviously, the opportunity to come tonight. I know you all are dealing with all kinds of things with COVID and just getting the school up and running, so we appreciate the time tonight. We have passed out 2 handouts that we want to go through tonight. The first is a bound copy of, is a description of our firm and our roles and services that we provide. And then there's a second copy, a stapled copy of our financial proposal that we submitted to Dr. Stacy a few weeks ago. So we'll try to go through these as quick as possible. I'm not going to go through every page. We really just wanted to leave this behind so you all would have something that told you all about us, what we do, our services, et cetera. So in terms of who we are as a firm, Compass is, obviously we provide municipal advisory services. And that's all we do. We're not a broker-dealer. We don't buy and sell bonds. We don't provide asset management services. We focus solely on providing financial advisory services to municipalities. We work in Kentucky, South Carolina, and West Virginia, are the 3 states that we do business in. We have a 90% market share of school districts in South Carolina, and we have a very large list of city, county, utility clients here in Kentucky and some school clients, and we're looking to grow the school base and bring some of those ideas that we utilize in South Carolina into the Kentucky school market to give you all some more financial options. So that's what we do as a firm and a team. Our team has been together, our core team has been together since 2002. Most of us got our start actually at Ross Sinclair and Associates, and were trained under the late Terrell Ross in the early to mid 2000s. We actually left Ross Sinclair in 2010 and eventually formed Compass, and that's kind of how we came to be. So it's basically, we're all trained at Ross Sinclair and are now on our own. In terms of experience of the firm, since 2002, we have done collectively about $25 billion in bond issues. So we do roughly $2 to $2.5 billion a year in bond issues. And those range from $100,000 equipment loans to $200 million bond referendums. So we have a lot of experience on different types of financing. But what we really wanted to talk to you all about tonight is really our approach and what we view our role is potentially as your all's financial advisor. So if you all will turn to page 5 of the bound presentation that we handed out, this is what we look at as our core duty as a financial advisor. So we focus on 3 areas: capital planning, execution, and then what we call post-issuances, which is essentially our ongoing services to you all. So the first part of that, the planning side, is what we think is one of the most important aspects of what we do. And if you look on page 6, we've actually outlined some of that process that we go through. Specifically, when we work with the district, we like to look at your all's capital needs over a 5 to 10 year horizon and figure out how we're going to finance those projects within that horizon. And more importantly, how are we going to do this while also maintaining budget flexibility? So that's the approach that we take. We understand that you all are just starting this new renovation project now, which is likely going to satisfy most of your capital needs in the next 5 to 10 years. So what we would focus on the planning side is how do we develop a plan that gives you all budget flexibility. So we want you all to have the flexibility to be able to fund emergency capital needs or any other capital needs that come up in the next 5 to 10 years. So if we work with you all, a very important part of the planning process will be figuring out a structure that gives you all that flexibility. The second part of the planning process, and it really goes into the execution process, is the bond rating side. So you all as a district do not have an underlying bond rating or your own bond rating. When you all have issued debt in the past, you all have used the state's bond rating to sell your bond issues. Well, over the course of the last 5 to 10 years, the state has received numerous rating downgrades as a result of the pension crisis and other financial difficulties. So we think it's very important for you all to go out and get your own bond rating in addition to the state bond rating, because we believe this will add a lot of value when you all sell your bonds. And by value, I mean a lower interest rate. So we think it's very important for you all to get your own bond rating. And we do this because we're going to market your bonds to a national audience. When we go out and sell your bond issues, we want to bring in every buyer possible. So whether or not they live in California, New York, or Kentucky, we want to touch them to see if they want to buy your bond issues so we can generate more interest and lower your interest rate overall. So the underlying bond rating is the mechanism to do that. This way, investors in other states know how strong you all are from a credit point of view. So they can look at your bond issue and say, oh, okay, well, Beechwood Independent has an A rating, so they're a strong credit. They also have the state backstop. So it's an additional credit enhancement for you all as you go out and market your bonds. So that's a recommendation we would make. And to validate that recommendation, on page 8 is we've actually put together a bond rating analysis for you all. And I'm not going to go through this in detail because it's very complex and it would take a long time. But I do want to point this out. So Moody's and S&P are the big rating analysts in our world. And Moody's is the rating that you all use with the state intercept program. So when you all go through this process, you would be asking Moody's to give you an underlying bond rating. So what we have done is we've taken their methodology, the rubric that they use to generate bond ratings, and we've created our own model that replicates that. And we've done this so we can take your information and figure out where you all will shake out in terms of a bond rating, and we also use it to figure out how we can help you all get the best rating possible. So this analysis here on page 8 is a snapshot of where we think you all will rate out on the bond rating side. And this assumes that you all will go forward and issue a $20 million bond. So we're saying this is part of the process. So it incorporates the new debt that you all would potentially issue. So the 4 categories they look at is the economy and tax base is 30%, your financial performance is 30%, the legal framework of the district is 10, and then a category they call leverage, which is essentially debt and pension, is the other 30%. So if you all look at the very bottom of the page, at the very bottom there's a highlighted box that says estimated instrument rating outcome. And if you go across there, it has a number and then a rating designation. So we think you all would get an A2 bond rating based upon your financial information, which is why we're recommending you all go forward with it. I want to point out the number, though, because this is very important. The number 6.48 correlates to this box to the far right column, and this is how they determine your rating. So 6.48 falls into that A2 category, AAA being the highest, AA, A, BAA, and on down. So A2 is a good rating. It's an investment grade rating. But you all are right on the cusp of A2 and A3. The threshold between A2 and A3 is a 6.5. We're showing you all at a 6.48. So you all are right on the border. So part of what we would do if we were hired by you all is to come up with a rating strategy to put you all in the best position possible to get the best rating possible, because you are on the border. So if you flip to page 9, we've actually outlined our recommendations for you all if you were to go through the ratings process. And at the bottom of the page, we've highlighted 3 strategies. One of them is in blue, which would require board action, which is why we want to talk about it here tonight. And the other 2 are more administrative. So these are items that Dr. Stacy and his staff would discuss with the analyst to help position you all for a better rating. But the one item in blue, financial policies, is very important if you all go through the rating process. So what we are saying is, you all as a district are very strong financially. You have a high fund balance, you have a high cash position. But in order to get credit for that in the rating process, you have to pass policies so that Moody's knows that you all plan to keep that money in a rainy day fund opposed to going out and spending all of it. So part of our recommendation would be to work with you all through the financial policies to help position you on the rating side. I know I ran through that rating piece really quickly, and that's kind of the bulk of this overview before we get into the presentation. Do you all have any questions on that specifically? I know it's a lot we just threw at you.
The process, how long of a process is that
So
to go through the rating process?
it's a great question. The fortunate thing for Kentucky school districts is that you already go through that process to get the state rating. So the additional time for you all to go through the process is maybe 3 to 5 days at most. So it's basically just a phone call with Moody's. So there's not really any additional time involved, at least from the approval process with Moody's.
Is there a state rating at the moment? I mean, what's the state
The,
rating?
the state rating is A1 right now. So we're projecting that you all are at A2. So it's important to remember that, you know, you want to get the best rating possible, but you don't have to get a rating better than the state. The whole purpose of the rating is to market your bonds to a national audience so they know who you all are as a district and not just the state of Kentucky.
The biggest issue is not our financial statement. I mean, our financial standing is really good, so that's bumping us up, but our geographical size bumps us down. I mean, we're just a really small district, so the way we generate funds is much different than a county system. Sorry, just adding that.
No, it's a great point.
Does
Okay,
anyone else
well,
have any questions?
moving on, that's really all I wanted to touch on kind of who we are and our approach. I think the rating part of it is a big piece. I will say this, that as part of our ongoing process, we like to meet with you all once a year. So if we're hired as your financial advisor, we would meet with Dr. Stacy and your CFO once a year, and we'd ask to meet with the board once a year so we could update you all on your debt position, any changes to the SIG formula, FSPK, any offers from the SFCC. So we don't want to wait for you all to call us. We want to make sure that we're in front of you all at least once a year to update you all about your debt situation, what's going on, and we do that free of charge. It's just part of, when we get paid for a bond issue, it covers all of that. And then the last page on this, I just want to point out, and this is probably more an administrative item, but we've recently, excuse me, it's the second to last page. Page 13, we've recently created an online client portal, and we took a snapshot of this just so you all could see it. So we upload all of your data onto this online portal. So every bond issue you do, every legal document, your BG1s, all of that information we upload for you all on an online portal. So if you have administrative turnover, if your CPA wants to look at data for your audit, they can just go to this website and pull up your information. So real quickly, that was about the firm. What we really wanted to talk about tonight was this financial proposal. So if you all will flip to this, the stapled 4 pages that we put together. So our understanding of your all's capital needs is that you've got this renovation project coming up. The cost is to be determined, but we've heard it's in the $23, $24, $25 million range. So we know that's kind of roughly
I'm
about.
glad you
this-
stopped there, because you were getting on, you're making me nervous.
Yeah, I'll go down next time.
You could start, take it, you're supposed to do like a little auctioneering there. I mean, all right, sorry.
So we know it's in that range. So the first thing we obviously do when we look at projects like this is we run your bonding potential. And your bonding potential is just a math formula. It's what revenues you all have less your current debt, and that leaves what you can bond out. So if you look at Exhibit A, which is the, I think, third page, we are showing what your bonding potential is at this time. $23,950,000. And I can go through this in detail if you want, or I can just keep this high level, because I'm sure you've heard this before. But we're calculating your bonding potential at $23,950,000. On the right-hand side of the page, we've actually broke out all the funds. So when we say you have $23,950,000 in bonding potential, that doesn't really tell the full picture. We want to show you all what that means in terms of construction cost, architect fees, the cost to issue the bonds, et cetera. So we've broken that out in this sources and uses of funds column on the right side of Exhibit A. So this is the breakdown of that $23,950,000, includes your SFCC offers of assistance. So looking at that number and knowing what your capital needs are, we've realized that you all are very tight on your capital needs versus what you can actually bond. So we sit down and said, well, what can we do to put you all in a better financial situation to bond this project and also have the flexibility that we discussed earlier? So what we recommend you all doing is, instead of doing a 20-year bond issue, which is customary for Kentucky schools, we actually recommend that you all consider doing a longer-term bond issue up to 25 years so that you can unlock additional bonding potential that can either fund additional capital projects, or it can serve as a flexible budget number if you all have unexpected capital needs. So if you go back to the first page of our proposal, we've included a box here that shows what your bonding potential would be if you went out an additional year, 2, 3, 4, and 5 years. So your bonding potential jumps from $23,950,000 all the way to $29 million at 25 years. So by doing this structure, asking KDE to let you all do a longer term financing, which is allowable under state law, you give yourself a bunch of budgetary flexibility going forward. I think the best example of this is if you just think down the road, let's say 7 years from now. So 7 years from now, the renovation project is complete, and you have a chiller go out, or you need a new roof, or you have some emergency capital need. If you all were to go forward and bond out $23 million under a 20-year bond issue, you would have no ability to cover that emergency capital need. So our recommendation is for you all to push that term out longer. So if you do have an emergency capital need, or you just have a general capital need that you think is in the best benefit of the school district, this structure allows you all to access that money. It gives you the flexibility. It also gives you the flexibility to take some of your capital outlay money and redirect it back into the general fund if needed. Now this is something that a lot of districts do that requires KDE approval, the transfer back, but it is an option for you all if you go to a longer term. So that would be our recommendation. Like I said earlier, KDE's typical bonding period is 20 years. State law allows you to bond up to 30 years. Most cities and counties bond at 25 years for capital projects. KDE usually allows 20-year financing. They do have a precedent of allowing up to 25-year financing. It's allowable under state law, and a lot of school districts use it. So part of the process in working with you all is the request to KDE to allow for 25-year financing or 22-year financing if you all want to go down that path. And we've actually outlined our strategy as to how we would pitch this to KDE. So we could go to KDE tomorrow and ask them to do 25-year financing. They're going to say yes or no. We want to be a little bit more strategic about it, and we want to put together a proposal to KDE so they understand why we're going out, why you all would be going out 25 years and how we would get there. And RJ, I'll turn it over to you if you want to speak to your thoughts on how we would get that approval from KDE.
Sure, Michael. I think this is a very compelling story for KDE. Number one, there's precedent for this, right? So they just authorized a 25-year bond issuance for Eminence in January of this year. Likewise, I think that Beechwood as a district has a very compelling argument, being that you're one of only 3 districts in the state that didn't get the second nickel matched. If that had occurred, we wouldn't be making this request to KDE.
Thanks for bringing that up.
There's no soreness.
Yeah, I can tell. So I think that, again, the precedent, state law allows it. The fact that you all have done what the state and the legislature has asked you to do in the past, and that is to put skin in the game. You've got more than your fair share. Unfortunately, they didn't do their part to cover it. And so that's why we think this is really a very easy request and ask of KDE. Plus, it allows you additional flexibility, and you could, for future
And I will,
needs.
I'm sorry, RJ,
No,
I
you're
thought you
fine.
paused.
Gotcha.
I will say, just to chime in on this, just for a second, I think there are 2 other things that I would add as caveats as to why it's a good approach right now. Number one, we're not a declining enrollment system. I mean, our enrollment has been steadily increasing even without, open lots, which sometimes I have to have the realtor explain to me how that happens. And the second thing, interest rates are so low right now. Those 2 things really impress upon me the idea of being creative, because in one way of looking at it, it's no different than taking a bond on a 20 and then refinancing 5 years in, based on the really low interest rates. All right, sorry, RJ, I just had to put
No,
those 2 things.
You're exactly right, and there's kind of the point to finish up, is that because rates are so low,
Oh, I'm sorry, I
and the
didn't mean
yield
to.
curve is so flat, no, you're fine, that there's not that much difference between 20 and 25 years. So the additional cost is not that great, and you get the additional flexibility that you need, that we would advise you to have, I think, maybe the best way to put that. So that's at least quickly our kind of game plan of how to approach KDE with this request.
And you all would not be asking them to put any money in. The extra 5 years would come out of your restricted fund money, so it's no additional commitment from the state. It's just a commitment from you all to fund the project a little bit longer.
Really taking the flexibility that they, from putting skin in the game, and use it in a way that benefits their community that's funding it.
Do you all have any questions? I know I threw a lot at you all, but do you all have any questions on the proposal itself?
No.
Anyone have any questions? I don't think at this time, but we will have, be able to discuss it and talk about how to move forward, but Mike, do you have anything?
No, we allowed Ross Sinclair to come and present. I think it was only fair to bring Compass in. I mean, I think they have put a creative proposal in front of you, and it's one that we can follow up and talk about in any capacity. And we can do that over the next week, and definitely be in contact. Any other questions?
If I have a question, can I just email you guys?
Sure.
Okay.
We'll leave you our cards, and one
Yeah.
thing we did put on
Yeah,
our,
we have your
They're-
cards,
they're-
yeah.
The cards
Oh,
are in the
perfect.
thing,
Yeah.
yeah.
one thing I do want to point out real quick before we left, we did include this on our proposal is, we're trying to grow into the school space in Kentucky, and we're offering all school districts a 50% discount on our fee for the first issue. So if you all went forward with a large-scale project, we would take the standard KDE scale and we cut it in half for our services. So that would be just south of $50,000 discount. So, and that would apply to that first issue.
Just one other thing I'd add as we close up here is that since I've started with the firm, part of the reason they brought me in is because I'd been a former superintendent. And, you know, since I've been there in June, kind of the strategy has been is when we put something together for a school district to do it, they run that past me, and it kind of, not that I'm a be-all authority on financing in school districts, but from the standpoint of, does it make sense to you as a former superintendent that this would be something that we would share with the board? They're very much in tune with trying to match up what will work for Beechwood schools or any district that we're working with and that superintendent to make sure that that connection is there. So that's the one thing that I see as an added benefit in that as we move forward and hopefully develop a partnership, that through that work, we're going to get you where you need to be as a district to get you what you need to do. And I was going to mention the fees, but he's already mentioned that, so we're good there unless anyone has any other questions.
Were you guys behind the Eminence program?
We were not.
Okay, just curious.
Is Eminence the only one that has done this?
No, we looked it up. I mean, we've seen it done before, and we were prepared to come here with the statistics, and we just found a boatload of them. So
Okay.
there's a handful every year.
That was the most recent one that we were.
That you saw, okay.
The interesting, real quick, the interesting thing is the majority of them are independent school districts. KDE has shown, they have shown a commitment to do this with independent school districts a lot more than larger countywide districts.
And the reason is you just can't generate enough local funds for a building. It's just really difficult, you know, with the geographical size and the lack of industry. I mean, we were basically a rooftop community. I mean, a community built, a school system built of homes, other than a couple of businesses. So, you know, that they have been, it doesn't happen often, but they have been understanding of certain places. And I think we have an added bonus that we're a growing system and the interest rates are really low. I never thought they would go below what they were back there, and here we are. So anything else you can submit to me, you can submit directly to them. They'll be more than happy to answer. Gentlemen,
Okay.
thank you all for
Thank
coming
you.
up.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Nice
it.
meeting you, thanks for coming. Okay, we already did public comment.
We did that, we rearranged.
Yeah. Sorry, Melanie, we did that without you. Public comment. I always send out a thing on Monday and I didn't. I'm sorry. Oh, I forgot. Okay. So, on to discussion items. The preview days recap from last week.
All right, so I just brought Zach and Justin. I was like, all right, you're probably going to have to be at the table and answer some questions on preview days. I mean, from my standpoint, number one, it was great to have kids back in the building. I mean, it's always, you know, the building, it takes on a different persona from the summer to any time kids are back in the building. And although we had seen athletes and the band quite often, it was really nice to see the kids back in the building. But gentlemen, if you'd like to come and talk through or answer any specific questions from the board that you might have, we'll give them just a second to make it over. We did, and I don't mind publicly saying, we did stretch the numbers of what the recommendation allowed. Just because we couldn't figure out how to get Chromebooks and textbooks and materials and syllabi at the later grades in the hands of kids before the first day of school. So we did stretch the numbers a little bit on what was allowable. However, the kids were great. The kids masked up, and they were happy to be back. And the only negative that I heard or saw was the fact that some kids were upset. They didn't realize they couldn't come back on the next day. They only got to come one out of the three. So, gentlemen, if you can just give your overview, then we can answer any questions that the board may have.
Yeah, the only negative we got was that they couldn't leave the kid for the whole day. It's a 3-hour chunk of time. Parents were honestly really, really appreciative in the drop-off line and pickup line, doing that twice a day. A lot of the feedback was, thanks for getting kids back in the building. Very appreciative of the board and the work that the buildings were trying to do, the leveled system and all the flexibility. So the feedback was, overwhelmingly positive from all the people having kids back. And you're right, it just brought life back to the building, which was pleasant, a change. It's been a few months, so it was nice to have them. Most of the groups on the elementary side were probably under 5, honestly, right? Because we had 6 groups technically, so not many. In the 5th and 6th grade, I would say that varied a little bit because they did more of a team approach with them changing classes. So you might have had 2 teachers with 8 or 10 kids and 2 teachers with the other 8 or 10, and then they would swap. But we tried to keep that number small and still get the kids what they needed. So getting their devices, getting their materials, getting a chance face-to-face to kind of walk them through stuff, especially at the younger age, was critical, really important. Big shout out. Technology guys, our department, they worked hard to get stuff ready for those days. That's no easy task. And it wasn't perfect, and we weren't perfect, but parents and community really appreciated it, and I was grateful from a building standpoint to be able to have that time. However long this stretch lasts, it was made much easier because of preview days. So I can answer questions, but Justin, go ahead.
Did all the devices come in for K through 2, was it?
K1 were
K-
good,
okay.
and 4, 6 were good. 2nd and 3rd are the 2 grade levels that
We're
we're
still
waiting
waiting, okay.
So
I knew there was a
they should have
question.
been in, but should have with the supply chain issues right now. It hasn't equated to, they're not in yet. And we do realize that is an issue for families. However, I mean, if you look at our order date and in any typical year, they could have gotten lost 3 times and we would still have them in. So we are asking for still some patience on that.
A couple of points on that too that we've kind of talked through with families. Those 2 grade levels didn't have devices in the spring when we experienced NTI, and that was more of a survival NTI. This is definitely a different situation, but to remember that aspect, but to also address the K1 having devices. Why does 2nd and 3rd not? From a technical standpoint, we're doing iPads for kindergarten, just more age appropriate for the programs and need. And then the MacBooks are the MacBooks that have been passed down a couple of times. And so to move from an iPad to a MacBook for 1st grade, a 4-year-old MacBook, to again suffice for the need of a 1st grader. And then 2nd through 12th is kind of that transition into Google and transition into Chromebook. Just makes the most sense from a user standpoint. So, and 90% of our families are able to provide a device for the 2nd and 3rd graders. So a majority of what's happening, there's a little bit of a difference, just for equity's sake, a little bit of a difference in pre-device schedule and post-device schedule for those 2 grade levels. But for the most part, they're not missing a beat.
Okay, thank you.
For the high school, the preview days were great. Our biggest push was for those teachers to be able to build a relationship with the kids, to go in blind, especially with a group of new students. You have 160 new students and not see any of them face to face. We felt like what a detriment to not be able to see our kids in person. So for you guys to allow us to do those 3 days and let those students come up here, meet their teachers, get their materials, figure out all the Google, the technology, so they can get home and at least feel some semblance of classroom community before they jump in online with that disconnect that exists. It's just natural that exists in the situation that we're in. So a really great opportunity for students to come up, see the building. You have some 7th graders who've never been on that side before. You have seniors who are clamoring to get back into the building. Just to give them that one day was great. I think what we all realized was in any of those sessions that occurred, how empty it still felt. And so our teachers were able to manage all the protocols and procedures that were in place for those days. It was almost, oh, this is what happened on these days. Like, they were surprised at how few students were there. And so with that kind of as a model, we hope to maybe replicate a day or so like that in the future, if we continue on this path to get students up here in some capacity, some way, shape, or form, and do that in a safe manner. I think that proof of concept on those first 3 days proved that we were able to get kids up here, keep them distanced, keep the classrooms safe and disinfected, and all do that in a way that was manageable. So very happy about the 3 days. And then leading into today seemed successful on a whole. You have technology glitches. We know the first 3 days you're going to have technology issues of just individual issues, not on a broad sense, but just troubleshooting here and there. But by Tuesday, Wednesday, I think that all this will be solved. Tim and his crew, I mean, they've been working around the clock over the weekend. We're getting people's passwords, and it's just minutia that occurs, but the support we've received from the tech department has been amazing. And once those technical glitches have been taken care of, then I think we're going to hit the ground running, and we already have, and for 95% of the situations. It's just a few of those things we knew, we foresaw those coming. So happy with where we are right now in regards to the situation that has been dealt to us, and our teachers have just been amazing, from completely revamping everything they're doing to troubleshooting problems as they come up, working together to collaborate. Every teacher's kind of finding their own niche and how they're going to address NTI. Just some innovation, some collaborative thought. Really, really impressed with our teachers. They're the ones who are on the front lines every day on the Google Meets with the students doing this every day. I felt Sarah and I talked like, what can we do? How do we help? There's nothing for us to do to kind of get in those classrooms and help. So we like to go at about 1,000 miles per hour. So it's like been hard for us to do it because we're not in with kids every day. So the teachers have been fantastic. So students, parents, families, community-wise, nothing but support. And so next couple of weeks, we just kind of troubleshoot and take it one day at a time, and we're excited to keep it going.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Justin?
I have one. Have we done anything additional for new students, both in elementary and high school? So students that are brand new to Beechwood, are we doing anything extra?
We've had a couple students come up and do the tour, just with them, doing a quick tour of the building. We did our new student orientation, where we did a presentation, a Google Meet, all new students and their families could join. Just communication with them between, we've had a lot of their families up here in the office, getting with BB and Susie on anything logistical, but anything specific outside of the orientation that we have, no.
I wonder if there's any way to foster or facilitate them meeting, even if it's virtually, a couple students, because I think it's an easier adjustment for people that have been here and are already connected to Beechwood and connected to a lot of people. But if you're brand new coming in,
Yeah, we could think of ways to match them up with, or a cohort of newer
Yeah.
students, just to get more acquainted with the school.
Especially for the aspect of building community. You know,
Right.
most of our new students are kindergartners, so the 80, 90 families on
Right.
our side, you know, but we do have over the last 2 weeks, I think we've registered like 20 new kids or something, so.
Wow.
Tim knows, that's why, that's why we're running these guys ragged. We need another device, But yeah, with the majority of ours being kindergarten, we have a chance over the summer. We
Right.
still did our screenings because those are in small groups or one-on-one. So a majority of the new kids got to see the building, got to meet the teacher, got to do all of that kind of stuff, but they did not necessarily get a community building with other students thing. That's something we could be mindful of.
maybe some kind of
'Cause that
NTI
happens
buddy or
organically
something.
when they're in the building.
Yeah.
They're part of it.
Right.
That's another one of the pitfalls or barriers that exist when you are at home remotely working.
Right.
But we can think of some creative ways to
Yeah.
overcome that.
Well, it might be an opportunity for some of our leaders to reach out to new students.
Yeah. We have student council in the high
Yeah.
school, our advisory group.
Right.
That could be one of the topics that they could tackle.
Yeah.
I think each grade level has 2 leaders within that group that could create their own Google Classroom, their own Google Meet session with those new students in that grade level.
Right.
There's a lot of opportunity there.
Okay, any other questions? No?
No, I'll just say that we'll continue to get creative around the small grouping and the social emotional. I do see that as a major need for our students and our families, and we're gonna be putting some stuff out for you guys to review on that task force for social emotional and mental health supports. I don't think that can be underestimated right now. I mean, from our community as well as our state as well as the nation, this has been a trying time mentally for our students. So we'll continue to push small groups. We'll continue to reevaluate and see what we can do for having more kids on campus.
Yeah, I think the elementary kids really need it as well as the high school. I mean, I've heard, came up to the Tiger Zone, he had a night that they had set up out here, well, it was actually an all-day event that was real successful from what I heard, but a lot of parents feedback about, I guess maybe one day happened at that time, or just the second day, just about their kids were hoping they would go every day, more the elementary, and they would be sad at night because they didn't get to go, and so.
Well, an opportunity for our students to engage with the school, with the building, with the teachers, any creative ways we can think of over the next little while. Because right now it's new and it's fresh.
Right.
And they're all on NTI and it's exciting because it's just new. But
It's day one.
2 weeks in from now, it's going to be routine and they're going to be able to have some time with their thoughts. So we need to be able to address that and support them. So anything we can do to think creatively, getting them engaged with the building and their teachers up here, we're looking at some opportunities already.
So are they doing it, when they go online, is it every single, like, class, just like they would be, or are they just, like,
In the high school, on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, they go through their classes as they would at school. Some of those classes may be a 10-minute Google Meet with tasks assigned and small group work happening. Some might be a 30-minute Google Meet that might be direct instruction. It might be an AP course. Each course is different based on the content that it has, but those Google Meet sessions run 8:15 to 3:15 as a normal school day. Some are longer than others. Then on Wednesday, it's the kind of an optional day where teachers could do small group through Google Meet, do small groups on campus with a small amount of students. So those Wednesdays are very flexible. So we're going to look at those over the next couple weeks, assess, evaluate, see where we're at, make adjustments as needed.
K3 is a little different. 4, 5, and 6 would be as he just described, really, but K3 is a little different just because you have one teacher, 20 whatever, 3 kids, give or take. The teacher doesn't sit on the same Google Meet for the 7-hour school day, and the 23 kids sit for 7 hours in front of a device with him or her. So it is a little different, but they do have designated times for contents, and so it's similar, but primary version.
so they definitely need parent supervision on the other end of what they're doing, like the whole entire time?
I think the 2nd and 3rd graders quickly are capable of logging in themselves, quickly are capable, once they get into a routine, I know, maybe I'm crazy. The 7 and 8-year-old kids get accustomed to it pretty quickly and handle their stuff pretty well. Absent of supervision, I don't know. It's trouble with social services if you leave a kid that young by themselves, I guess. But you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, like, with the parent next to them going, with the computer the whole time. I mean, is that something there?
No,
I don't think so for
I don't
second
think
and
so.
third,
Second
when
and
they get the
third, I don't think
device.
that's true.
K1,
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
know,
K1 has got to be kind
K1.
of rough with.
that would be rough. I mean, there's no way around saying that would be rough, right? I mean, if you have a kid right now that's in kindergarten and they're trying to do anything with a device, that's not going to be.
It's the worst part for me.
Yeah.
Your first year of school, this experience as an elementary principal, that's probably the worst part for me if I had to pick one thing.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? We'll continue to update you. Warren is kind of handling some of the lead on the social emotional task force, so we'll keep you posted on that as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had the opportunity Friday to pop in, and as a masked observer, you actually saw smile lines for the 6 or 7 students that I passed. So kudos to be able to do that, and I think it really set a precedent for them being home and doing the NTI, but it was pleasurable being here on Friday. It really was.
Any other comments? No? Okay, we'll go on to our next item, which is an update on construction, although I don't know how much.
Yeah, I really
We did-
just, it was an agenda item that was thrown out. I wanted to make sure, because it is a really big topic. So I wanted to make sure, I didn't know exactly the direction that you guys were looking for. I mean, obviously, the BG1 went in last time. The BG1 has 2 different phases. The phase 1 is the addition off the back of the elementary classroom. And the second phase is the 36, the 27, the 33, the 36, and the 58 additions.
That's all?
That's it, right, yeah. And I think it's 58. I mean, we've had trouble narrowing that one down for sure, but I think the 58 is what connected the front to the gym, which is now the library. So the BG1, we've gone into final drafting for bids. All right, I want to make sure that we understand final drafting for bids is not the final project proposal for bids. We've got to have something to put out bidding. You guys are welcome to go. Yeah, if you need, you're welcome. Thanks for coming. Sorry about that. I do feel like at some point in time, we need to put together a committee for, what the community wants to see in the new building before things are finalized, but that doesn't help us right now for the bidding process. I mean, cost projection process. Once we get projected costs back, we'll come back to you and then look at moving toward, towards the process of finalizing a plan that would go out for final bids. I don't think there's going to be much change. I think phase 1 is going to be much easier than phase 2. Phase 1 is 12 classrooms. There's not a lot of creativity or difference of opinions when it comes to 12 classrooms. And again, the purpose for the 12 classrooms is not only are we a growing system, but we really can't figure out where to put enough trailers to be able to house kids during the project without doing that.
As well as the cost, because they're
Yes.
expensive.
Yeah,
to-
so when you look at the cost of trailers versus the cost of the 12 classrooms, return on investment clearly leans to the addition. So that'll be phase 1. Phase 2, we'll come back with a projected cost on a standard layout. Then it would be up to you whether to send that to committee and how to go about the finalizing the plans to move on with a official submission for official bids. I think that from our standpoint, there's a lot of different flexibility that comes into play. The lab space is really critical for us, along with increase from a learning standpoint. But we're really open to multiple different options, and I think that that's a board's decision. Now, outside of that, the timeline, if we were to throw a general timeline, we're looking at probably the whole project moving out sometime around February or March for We hope to put that out to bids around that time. And then from there, it would be a 30-day process. And eventually we would move into phase one, starting sometime between spring break and the end of the school year. Phase one is at least 8 to 10 months, and that would be something that would be going on as we entered back into school, but there's going to be very little disruption at that point. They can start working after arrival. It will make a new path into the upper access for deliveries. So if you're, what you would look out the window right now and see, you're going to be pushed back about 10 feet into some of that grass area. So the grass portion between the band, what we call the band lot, is the student lot, that would be right on track with the new angle of the road. From there, we'd move into the second phase, and if everything goes well on bid projection, then you're looking at anywhere between 18 and 24 months, depending on weather for completion.
I do know, I spoke to the mayor as well on, like, getting in touch with them once we have our plan set to, about traffic studies and that kind, because we're gonna have, it's gonna be a mess, so. And I guess they're still having issues backing up, but if we don't, it all depends on what we have going on at the time.
Unless
But we just
miracles
wanna-
happen,
To communicate.
with a growing system,
I know.
we're always going to back up, even with a staggered start time. And I just want to be clear on that. We've brought in we've done 2 different traffic studies just since I've been here, and literally the only way that a really impressive firm in Cincinnati was able to better the traffic flow was to organize Kroger drop-off and pickup, and that's private property that we can't access.
Well, that's always been the issue with that.
I know.
But-
It's just a single way in and a single way out.
We'll just reach out to them. once
Yeah, I
we get
will. I
ready,
absolutely will. And I know it will take a coordinated effort. We will need the city when we start phase 2, because that will take a much more coordinated effort in morning traffic than we currently have. Tim's not going to be able to do that alone. So we're gonna need, that's going to be a city issue for a little while, especially at the beginning. All right, especially at the beginning. Now, outside of that, I didn't know exactly what questions or what you wanted updates on, but I'm open to any questions or any statements that the board may have.
Nothing on my end.
The one thing that I would like to ask, if you're in favor of, the shingles on the elementary building, that was a 2010, which means that they're 10 years old. They're already starting to show some weathering. If there's an opportunity to roll that in as an addendum to phase 1, to re-roof the whole thing at a better cost, would the board entertain me at least looking at cost?
Absolutely.
Yeah, what number, or what warranty did they have? Surely we didn't buy 10-year shingles, did we?
Yeah. Or was the installation correct? That's another question.
It's
At
going to
10
need
years.
replaced pretty soon.
So were they not installed correctly? What?
I think we bought a new roof and it was like 25 years.
I would
Yeah.
say the length of the shingle life of the elementary building is not as extensive as some places might be. I mean, and again, you can look,
So they probably went with a less expensive product, I'm guessing?
well, I don't know, but I can tell you based on some of the weathering, I wasn't here, but based on some of the weathering, typically, a school system does not have a shingled roof, okay? That's just number one. I mean,
What they
shingles
normally
within
have.
themselves don't, even the best shingles, they may say 30, but we're all happy if we get 20. If it's less than 30 and it's not a dimensional, then that number comes down.
What's the norm? Metal?
So typically on a school roof, you're going with some kind of you know, harder surface area than a shingle, if nothing else for hail damage or, you know, a storm issue alone. But residential, we tend to go with shingles because it's a much cheaper product in general.
Right.
So I just would like to, if it's okay with you, I don't want to add, but the initial projection on the back is much better than what we had anticipated. So it might present us with an opportunity to put all that together as opposed to patching in shingles. That's not, you know, that's not the perfect way, right? And
Well,
I hope I'm
you should
saying that
explore-
all okay. But it just would present a good opportunity, especially since the time I've been here, I'm already seeing some darkening on the shingles, and that's only going to get worse.
Well, it'll make it more uniform for the longevity.
Right.
Then it's universal, it's not half and half.
And I think you should at least explore the cost of other materials.
Right.
Yeah,
Something that's not gonna be
yeah.
10 years
I
from
would
now.
like-
If you
and-
do that, it might change the total look of the, I mean, you gotta think about that too.
Yeah, yeah. And we won't do anything to hurt the look, but the one thing that I do think the gentleman from Compass pointed out tonight, without even intentionally doing it, is we've worked really hard over the last 6 years to get on routines, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 7 year plans. And roofing, you just don't want that to become a pop-up issue, because if it's not really, really strong, then leaks are going to occur, and when leaks occur, the domino effects occur.
Right.
So if you'll allow me to at least research that and see about making it uniformed, I think that would be at least a good thing to look at.
For sure. Yeah, agree.
Any other questions? Continue to update you. There will be action on the September board meeting, and you will get that packet ahead of time. But we have to put the DFP on there to start after the BG1 process, and then of course it'll hit pretty hard with the BG2 and the BG3, and then hopefully we can move into a pretty quick timeline with a committee or whatever action you want to take on that, because interest rates are at a absolute unbelievable spot, and that is really good for us. Okay, and if anyway, anytime, and this is for you know community as well. It's a community project. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to email me, and I'll answer accordingly.
Okay, anybody else have questions on construction?
No.
No? Okay. Go on to the reentry plan.
Okay, so I just want to update you guys on a couple of things that we've been working on. So over the course of from the last Monday night we were here, and the governor just had made the announcement that we were recommended to push back the start date of in-person. I've been working with multiple other Northern Kentucky superintendents to try to finalize a path to re-entry while maintaining a level of safety that goes above and beyond what the governor has asked of schools. Now, number one, I thought it was very important that we look at a regional, look at this as a region, not as system by system, because obviously there's strength in multiple districts forming together, and there's also increased in intellectual capacity. I mean, getting together in a room and discussing as a multi-system group is a nice way to approach such a large topic. So I've sent you, and it's not out for a public consumption yet, but I have sent you a dashboard that we've been working on. And one thing that you all have asked, and even the community has asked, is what metrics would overlap our level system. And so what I've tried to do is to use that group and how we're going to try to re-enter to school to fulfill the request to add metrics, a more specific and defined metrics system for our level system. Now,
Did you send that to us today?
if you look, I think Sarah had to resend it because my link wasn't active. If you'll just
Oh.
look and see if Sarah Shovel, you got an email from her. If not, I'll resend it to you right now.
Yeah, I might need it again. Maybe I accidentally deleted it.
I'm redoing it right. I'm sending it to you right now. Anybody else have trouble seeing it? All right, so if you look, you'll see that we've come up with general statements of percentages and a color system that overlaps with our level system. Now, anything in green would give us the ability to be at a hybrid or 100%. But you know, obviously, right now, I think we would have more ability to have a hybrid approved than we would 100%. And I think from a transitioning back into school, the hybrid offers a much smoother transition. Just like the one thing that they didn't say, I do believe that having kids on campus ease some tension inside as well. I think teachers were nervous about how to do that and how to maintain a safe environment, and they didn't have any trouble with the protocol, and I think everything went really well. So how do we transition? You know, this is the way that we're looking at right now and doing research to transition back. However, to make the data school by school relevant as opposed to zip code or as opposed to the chart that the governor put out today, I am asking the board whether or not you want me to entertain running our own testing protocol that would test a percentage of Beechwood students every week that would provide direct data on our school, not just our zip codes.
So UK doing that, are they doing all students, part of students, how?
So initially it would be every, and not every, it wouldn't be mandatory. You know, I don't think we want to get into mandating a test for a student to come back. And it's not as much about every kid, but we would initially ask that if you're coming to face-to-face instruction and it's okay with a parent, then we would test everybody initially. And then from there, based on the testing company's recommendation, it would be a random sampling that would look at and try to maintain, because from what you see and the doctors and everybody is telling us, it's really what you're trying to do is prevent a spike. You're trying to prevent an outbreak. I mean, every once in a while, there's going to be a kid, there's going to be a parent, there's going to be a teacher, unfortunately, that tests positive whether we're in school or not in school. But to be able to isolate that quickly is great. But really the goal is to mitigate risk and to stop a spike or an outbreak. So based on what our initial conversations that we've had, that would be the way to go about that is to pay for testing for a small group. And I
I'm
would
still
just
having
have,
trouble seeing the report. Is the cost estimate in there?
yeah. So no, not on the sheet doesn't
Okay.
have a cost estimate. So currently, if we did it right now, it'd be $25 a test currently. So I mean, if you had to test from now until the end of the school year, I mean, you would be somewhere around $100,000 of total costs. Now, the problem is if we don't look at some way to have an ability to test on our own, I find it very difficult, as well as the other superintendents have been out working on this, to find a path back in once the fall hits. Flu season's gonna hit, strep throat's gonna hit, the October allergy season's really difficult in our region. So how do we assure parents, how do we assure ourselves that we are preventing an outbreak? And to be honest with you, I haven't come up with the group hasn't come up. The doctors that we're working with have not come up with a way to put the metrics back to our leveled system without some kind of local testing.
Is there a way we could affiliate with a pre-existing testing facility? Because testing's free if you just walk in.
Yes, and we are still looking to see if that is an option. As of right now, it would not be because that is offset through different funding.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are looking at whether or not the second round of CARES money could be specifically for that. We're also looking into FEMA reimbursements. You know, all of those things are going to be, you know, we hope will be available. But we also know there's some cost-saving measures on the other side of just alone the number of staff that we don't have to automatically quarantine for 14 days due to an exposure if we have our own testing system, or the many other reasons that could have that domino effect put into place. So I'll just be real honest with you. Our goal, we had two goals. Number one, to try to have a solid enough system that we got approval that no matter what happened on the 28th, we wouldn't get bounced back again. Okay, and then we've worked really hard that if our boards are in agreement, and obviously this is just a general presentation because I want you all to give feedback, I want you all to ask questions, I want you all to think of different avenues, and I'll be more than happy to share the districts that are currently working so that boards may end up wanting to cross-reference and have discussions just like we've had discussions. But the second goal has become an issue of if we're moving forward with sports, how do we get a good enough of a system not only for in-school but for our sports teams as well. And I don't know if you heard the governor's presentation, but he did allude to testing. He didn't mandate testing, but he did allude to testing for athletes. So I just see this as a way to start the initial conversation of how metrics are tied to a level system, more than just if one kid gets it, we're switching levels. I don't want to be, and I've had so many questions about why aren't we starting? Well, X school started, why aren't we starting? Number one, we're not a private. I just got to put that on the table. And then number two, what system are we going to have in place to know what we're dealing with if a kid tests positive? I don't have that answer today, but if we were able to move forward with this, then I would have a much better answer to that question and feel much more comfortable as a superintendent making a recommendation to you all about re-entry whenever somebody says we can or when somebody says we can't. That's irrelevant. For me, it's still a safety issue that we have to answer, you know, for our clientele and our students.
So it would be
The
a
test-
percentage?
You're looking at what's the turnaround time for results?
24 hours. And it is the test that's 99.1% accurate, not the quick swab.
Is it through a private, is it through a private company?
It's a
Is it
private
through-
testing company, yeah. And again, it's just initial conversations. I mean, you know, obviously,
Right.
we're gonna look at,
Is it a
at the
blood test or is
consortium,
that,
whether we,
is it a blood test or is it the nose?
nasal.
So if we go and work as a region, that possibly we do it, okay.
Everything is data-driven, so this gives us the opportunity to have data prior to the 28th, is what we're thinking?
If we get it in place, I think it would be great if we could say we're having school and playing football from just a community standpoint. But at the same time, I don't want to rush something on the flip side either. But we are looking at as soon as we could have a viable program for our boards and as a group, be able to negotiate bid and negotiate pricing. We haven't even negotiated yet, right? Because we haven't had final approval. And I really didn't have a chance to talk to you guys. All you all have asked me is to continue to look at metrics for our leveled system. What's going to determine when we make a shift? And that's what I've really tried to do, is to put something concrete in front of you. I don't know how to do that without our own data. And again, I just don't.
25 is the worst-case scenario.
What's that?
25 is the worst-case scenario?
Yep, that's what the initial price was given, without knowing how many systems were going to work together and how many students that would equate to.
Okay.
So you were talking about staff before, staff and students. So right now with the athletic program, when they test positive, don't they have to provide another test before coming back or not?
No, I mean, it depends on the situation. I mean, are you asking if they test positive?
Well, no, well, if you have a group or somebody test positive.
Are you asking from the state or from us?
From us.
Yeah, we're asking that before they come back, that they have a negative test.
Say they don't.
Or they live out their quarantine time. And so, in some cases, it's two positive, negative tests, because one.
Employers are doing the same. That's why I was asking, for the reason that you talked about before, instead of paying a 15-day or 14-day quarantine sick leave, they're asking for that to happen. So
that's right. Several places, but you've got to facilitate that testing aspect if you're going to ask for it to happen more frequently.
And it was going to be a random, you said it's a random study?
Yes, and that's based on the recommendations of the testing company on what percentage would have to happen on a weekly basis for us to have viable data. I'm not, that's not my area, so we've really worked on with that company, looking at what we would have to have if we were any other place of business. So here's the problem.
So not every student would be tested? You would have some kind of cycle?
Every student coming back face-to-face would be tested initially.
Okay.
All right, because that has to give us our baseline.
Okay.
And that baseline would put us into the color code that you see on the dashboard. All right, then from there, to be able to maintain, it has to be a certain percentage that are randomly chosen per week. Now, there is a cost associated. I mean, and it's not a small cost. Hopefully we can get that down. We're hoping we get it down to 15, which would reduce, significantly. Again, we just didn't know when we called the first time about how many districts were going to move into and work with us from a coordinated vantage point. I can tell you that every county system has already, there's big systems mixed with independent systems that are looking at doing this together.
it doesn't. It won't open. I said this doesn't open in Google.
I finally got mine to open.
Did you?
Yeah.
How'd you get on your phone?
Yeah. I turned my Wi-Fi off and used my data. I like the dashboard.
Yeah, I do too.
And that way, not only do you see, over in the far left on the top, you see how we're running in relation to the other systems that would be doing this along with us. Then you see for us the total number of positive cases. And then the bottom right is the matrix. And again, based on the governor's recommendation, right? If it's over 5%, he has recommended that we not have face-to-face instruction. And we've maintained that same level in our local format. Again, this does two things for us. Gives us our local, data, not by zip code, but by, these are numbers of students inside the building. Number two, and it's not as big a deal for us, but it gives each building its own set of data, not even as a system. So you can imagine the struggles for us coming back face to face. In other places, that's massively significant because you're not having to shut down the whole system. If one school has a problem, then you can work school by school.
And the percentage would be percentage of students and staff in that building?
Yes, ma'am.
That are positive. That are positive.
No, that are tested.
Okay.
Oh, are you asking about the percentage? Oh, yeah. Percentage test or the percentage for the colors?
The colors, percentage colors. So if
Yes.
it's 2%, that means 2% of,
Students and staff.
okay. Yeah, I like seeing these numbers, that's great.
You know, it only
It
worked
takes
in
a
our
little bit of the
favor
emotion
because the
out of
trend
it.
right now is going down.
I mean, it's,
The trend is going down. It's new cases is at 5.1% right now.
And then I don't know if you've seen it at the very bottom left. Okay, so first of all, we've linked the healthy standard, the Beechwood return to school plan. And then at the bottom, I don't know if you all have seen the decision tree that we've put into place, but you can click that link as well and look at our decision-making process. And
is
see if
that
you.
in the same presentation?
It's down the bottom
Yeah,
left though.
there's a link
It's like
on
Oh, I
purple or
see it.
The
something.
bottom
see it.
left. So, yes, Ron, I just don't, I know the average person with the average opinion doesn't understand or maybe not think about the weight that, that you guys have and that I have. The weight's not easy, right? Because on one side, you want the kids back, and I'm super worried about mental health, but on the other side, we have to find a way to be able to give our community the due diligence that we've done our due diligence to really make sure to go above and beyond from a safety standpoint. And in our discussions with the Department of Education and our discussions with everybody, we can't find a way to do that without our own data access. Now, and Nisa brings up a great point. If we can coordinate with a testing location or something through that the government has already established, then so be it. That would be phenomenal. But at the same time, we haven't been able to secure that yet.
Well, and for this information to be accurate, it would need to be through the same testing for the region.
Same testing or what?
It would need to be the same testing for the region.
Yes. And so,
And with the same turnaround time.
yes. So
Right, and I
every
don't think we
system-
can get a turnaround time with one of those bigger, look at, some of them 9 days, they're finished. By the time they realize they have it, their quarantine time's over, so they
Yeah,
can't
last I
notify
heard it was like
anybody.
48 hours.
You can't,
Yeah.
what?
Getting, like, that was a good turnaround time.
Oh, if you
48
can,
hours.
that's at one of those fast, like you have to drive to, was it Richmond
I know there was one in Lexington.
in Lexington to get a rapid
A
test?
rapid test.
Right. But-
So, again, I promise, I've done a lot of research. I really appreciate the superintendents coming together. I really appreciate the boards looking at and giving us the flexibility to kind of look at something different. But, a lot of places really like our multi-leveled system. And I do think it's a great plan. But it's been nagging at me ever since the night that we made the presentation. And even though we had, our limited ability of like multiple kids test or a teacher with more contact tests, while that was okay, that was the one nagging piece about how do we make it better. And this is kind of where I'm at on that. So if you'll just do me a couple of favors, look over that data sheet. And just think about, we understand that, from a HIPAA standpoint, we've already checked into the legalities. It would not be mandatory. Any kid, any parent that didn't feel comfortable, they could opt out. We would just pull another kid to meet the minimum requirement. So that's kind of the situation. Again, it would be 100% minus the people who, I mean, again, we're hitting anything over 90%. We're gonna get great baseline data. And now, anybody that doesn't test, that gets added in at the same percentage, so it can move your
It can skew.
percentage up, right?
So people that don't test,
Yes.
they would be in
It factors
school?
into the same rate.
No, I mean, I'm back to, would they be NTI or would they be in person?
Yeah, I don't think we can mandate that a kid has to test to come to face-to-face. Well, I'll still check the legalities on that, but as long as
UK
we get.
did, UK did.
Yeah,
they did.
so did
Um,
William and Mary.
So
Yeah.
what UK did, and it's been very good, they did 100% of the students and only 1% were positive. And then they picked, this week, they tested all the Greek organizations. That was like 25% of campus.
Yeah.
So that's similar to what you would do, is test everybody, and then you'd have some kind of cycle where you're testing.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Now, a little different on the legalities of required school versus
testing
higher
staff.
ed. But I think most parents, I don't want to speak for them, and I'm not doing that, but I think most people will be willing to provide that. It's not the one that goes way up into your, they said it's not overly intrusive for kids. And again, it just provides us with solid, accurate, immediate turnaround data for us. We would want to do it on a Thursday. Once we get back into a weekly cycle, that way we get the data on Friday. That way we set, if there's a level change for Monday. So that would be our normal turnaround. Test on Thursday, data back on Friday afternoon, communicate for the week ahead, prior to Monday, to give people the ability to make changes if needed.
And what about staff? That will get the same for staff and, okay.
Yep. So let's say a staff gets in contact, okay, we can test them. We can do an additional test, and if it's negative, we can come back in 3 days and do a secondary test before they return. And now we're on a 4-day turnaround as opposed to a 14-day turnaround.
Mike, can you find out if there's any data from the private schools and an increase in cases at all? Or any cases that have been documented?
Yeah. I would have to call and be at their mercy, but they have been pretty good. I mean, Holy Cross
Holy Cross is
canceled
closed.
today on one case. But again, if we had a matrix, that might be a very isolated incident, or it may not be an isolated incident. And that's what's hard to determine as of today. And so that's exactly what we're trying to prevent, is the yo-yo. Where we're in, but we're out, we're in, but we're out. But yeah, I know that we've been talking to Cupcath and Notre Dame, and we'll continue having those conversations.
The other thing UK is doing is they have an app. They have to answer like 4 or 5 questions if you have symptoms. They have to do that daily before they go to class.
Yeah, the self-screen. Yeah, now we still have the protocol that would go back into place, even with this, of temperature taking. I mean, none of that protocol, the self-assessment from home, none of that protocol changes, for the week. And I really do like the fact that the app makes it, updates it very quickly, and they can see the percentage of students that are doing it, which is another huge advantage.
We have the same app.
No, I'm saying I like their app.
Oh.
I like the fact that, they have to do that daily, so UK can see
Right.
the percentage of students. I think that's a really a good idea. I don't know exactly, I haven't got into a way to try to verify percentage of home self-assessments, but I do like that program that UK has.
The app,
I've been impressed.
I mean, couldn't you program it to where it would send it out to them, a reminder every morning? Like,
Yeah, it's just,
yeah.
I don't know the call, I don't know
Real
the.
cost.
Yeah. And,
I know, it's
I've been
expensive.
working on, this is what I've been working on. How can we get control in a very safe and positive way? Because I have no interest in putting the board or myself in conflict with the Director of Public Health. Forget the government. I mean, the director of the public health is the one that I worry about.
For sure.
You know, so I have no interest in any kind of conflict, but I do have interest of how we get and maintain our own source of data, how we do put protocol in place to make it a safe transition, how we do get kids back in the building, but in a safe manner. And this is the only thing I've gotten so far.
Well, we don't have to rely on any other, I mean, because even the city is only getting it once a week, and it's hard for them to get it once a week, so.
Yes.
Is there a way to speed up the contact tracing so we can get that information more quickly? Because that takes a while.
Yes.
If we do our own.
If we do our own. Yeah, and that's a problem, right? Because the health department only you know, if there's anybody I really feel sorry for, I mean, it's the health department, right? I mean,
Right.
they're in the middle of all this. So I'm gonna throw that one out there. However, if we contract privately, then we have access to run all of that through a third party at a higher level than the health department would be able to do it for us. And that's nothing against the health department, but they weren't, as much as teachers weren't ready to move into NTI, our Northern Kentucky Health Department wasn't ready to manage 18 districts.
For sure.
On weekly calls, and that's nothing against them. So, dashboard, you're welcome. I'll share the company that we've initially been talking to. You can look at testing. I'll share the districts that we're talking to. Again, I don't want to. I'll also share some other information that we've been working on. But again, I think it's good to get all of our ducks in a row before we move forward in any other way.
This is
Good
really
work.
great to see. This is
Yeah.
great to see.
Well, you all asked, that was the one thing, you asked for metrics. So this is what we've really tried to do. And again, I will say this isn't just Mike. Other districts have been over the top engaged, but you know, they did like our leveled system, and so it was a good overlap onto things. Now, if we were to move forward, I want to just make sure you see in the bottom right-hand corner. Right now, red is NTI, yellow is level 3, and green is level 2. However, anything under 2% could be level 1 or level 2. I just put it initially as level 2 because that made a much easier, again, you know, it's all about transitioning. If we're able to move forward, I don't think throwing the pendulum from one side to the other is good for anyone.
So you're saying it can be 1 or 2? I mean, they don't even have 1 on.
Yeah, I just didn't put,
Yep.
you know, because I think initially, I was thinking of initially.
Okay.
And if there's anything else, I mean, please don't hesitate, because I know that's a really big conversation piece. And that's why I thought it was good at a working meeting to go through the different aspects. I'll follow up with each of you on some more specifics.
Thank you.
I don't have anything else unless you all have specific questions.
Anybody? Melanie?
Nope.
Anissa? Okay, well, we'll go on to our next item, which is taking a motion to make the agenda part of the official board minutes.
I'll move to make the agenda part of the official board minutes.
I'll second.
Mrs. Berger?
Yes.
Dr. Salminiano?
Yes.
Ms. Stricker?
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes.
Reverend Moss?
Yes.
Okay, on to our next item. Well, next item is other business, which I did ask Dr. Stacy if he would give us an update on the sports update. I know there was to be a decision or something back from the governor today, but
Yeah. Okay, just before we move forward, I need to make sure that you know that we populated that data sheet with fake none of that's, none of that's.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my.
It said it on there.
Yeah,
Okay.
it says it on
Because
None
I
of that's
panicked
real,
at
that's-
first, and then I
all right,
read
so I
it.
just want, I mean, if that were to get out, somebody be like, what? All right, I'm sorry, I just had that, I apologize.
Well,
Okay.
since we don't have any data that we figured
Yes,
that was.
I just wanted to, it's like,
Right.
I had a moment of panic there, so I apologize. So just to make sure that you all, I'm sure you're up to date, but last week the KHSAA voted to move ahead with fall sports. And then today at his weekly press conference, and I haven't been able to watch it all.
I did watch it.
Okay. The governor said that he was not going to overturn the ruling of the KHSAA. So that means that, for us, we have to be careful moving into the sports seasons, but that means that they're moving forward. We have followed the recommendations of the governor. We have followed the recommendations of the director of public, commissioner of Kentucky Public Health. I plan on following the recommendations of the KHSAA. We do not have all the different aspects of what that's going to entail from guidance. We've been small group for the most part up until this time with protocol in place. We will continue that moving forward. It's just that helmets went on today. And some people don't realize that based on, this is specifically for football. Helmets have to be on 5 days. Shoulder pads have to be on 5 days. Full pads have to be on 3 days before you have your first game. Those are all mandatory steps of building up. So if the first game is projected to be September the 11th, then you're on a countdown to be able to fulfill that regulatory requirement. And that's why sometimes football gets in a different conversation. It's not because of anything other than those set requirements. I do think it's important for us not to only look at a return to school that tries to correlate with that in some capacity, but also how we are maintaining the safety for the athletes as well. And again, I go back to the testing system is the only way that we really know for sure for not only academics, but also athletics and also our extracurricular programming that have large numbers of those that will want to reactivate their time after school once we come back in person. Now, did you hear anything else other than it was a general, he wasn't going to go against KHSAA?
Right. I forget who the guy is that speaks after him,
Dr. Stone.
Dr. Stack?
yeah.
Mhm.
So he did raise some concerns about specifically football, but basically said that they were not going to go against the decision. One thing that did come up in that conversation is I did hear that the mask requirement, they clarified again, is when you're in person in school would be a mask, whether you're 6 feet apart or not. Not either or, which some people interpreted it that way.
That's their recommendation, or they're saying the CDC changed the recommendation?
Kentucky.
That's Kentucky's.
Kentucky's recommendation.
So what do you go by? So which one do you go by?
Well, I mean, I think that's all conversations, for you guys. From what I can tell, and again, I don't, it always comes back to somehow different pieces, but from what I can tell from most people, they want school to get back in session at this point, more than the mask. And again, I don't want to speak for anyone. I'm just telling you from the conversations that I've had at different places, that has died down a whole lot because most places you go, people are masked up other than restaurants. The issue for me, and I don't want to dive down a rabbit hole too far, but the issue for me is, okay, once you get and I know I have to preface with my brain sometimes swirls, but even when we put a good testing system, if we move forward with it in place and put good procedures in place, the hardest aspect for me is the social outside of the building. Because we are so close with so many different schools, and from a geographical standpoint, our kids overlap in social circumstances. So that's where it becomes really hard to be able to mitigate the risk. It's just the outside connections. So I'm hoping that if we're able to get a good plan in place, and if we get back into a more set routine, that we have some help on some of, at least some of those incidents where that takes place.
Anybody have any other questions?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'll follow up with each one of you,
Okay.
go over some more details, and then, again, just ask me as many questions. I didn't mean to spring a whole lot on you tonight, but it's the best I got for you on a reentry, or an addition to the reentry plan.
This was good. This was a good thing to spring on us.
Yeah, I like it.
That's awesome.
And again, FEMA, second round of money, cost prevention. I don't think when you look at the total aspect and you divide that by a monthly cost, I think it becomes a much more reasonable number.
When will we know if any of those funds are available to help out with us?
We have a meeting, well, we'll submit it to FEMA, I promise you
Yeah.
with Ray.
Okay.
It'll be submitted to FEMA. I think we'll get a portion of those costs back. You know, they are expecting some second round of funding. You know, we're still advocating for that to be kid by kid, not by one group. And again, you know, who knows what happens, but I won't know anything on that, you know, for, I'd say, a couple of weeks.
What's our current enrollment?
Our current enrollment for district-wide is 1478. 40 of those students are at Guardian Angel, about 30 are preschool, so we're over
So
1,400.
initial testing's like 40,000 roughly.
Initial
for
testing
teacher-
would
for
be
staff and-
$36,500 initially.
That was staff also?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's about the quick math I did.
Mhm.
But-
Yeah, that's what I've been, yeah.
But, again, that's the worst case. Hopefully with some of
Right.
the systems going together and we can get a cost reduction. And we haven't gone down that yet, but as soon as I know, and then it'd be somewhere around 3,500, somewhere in that range, weekly. So it's not cheap. It's not. But we knew this year wasn't going to be cheap in any
So
shape or
far,
form.
nothing about this year has been,
Nothing about this year has been cheap. But we know it's immediate data directly tied to our institution.
well, we're not relying on other sources too.
Yeah. So I won't know anything, unfortunately, before you probably have to make a decision one way or the other. I probably won't have an idea on cost reimbursement. However, we'll obviously know whether we can drive the cost down, you know, from an
Okay,
initial
right.
purchase.
Anything else? Any other business? I think we've all been consumed with just this business. I don't think there's been really anything else but this business, so typically it would be our building project. but,
Well, it's, you got,
know.
you know, one of the most complex projects I've been associated with, because it's not just going out in the middle of the field and building the school. It's a very complex, and for some reason, it's not our number one topic, and nor does right now it deserve to be our number one topic, but to try to keep it going while everything else has been a challenge. But I'm really excited. Can I ask one clarifying question on the, can I make the reference that we probably won't want to send the phase one out to committee? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, just go ahead with it, yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean,
it's
'cause-
pretty straightforward. It's
Right.
Yeah,
like-
for sure.
It's the same thing we've done twice.
Okay,
Yeah.
I will submit that to you to take a glance at, because we do have one pretty cool little addition that I'm super pumped about.
To connect the facility, yeah.
Yep, so I'll send that out as soon as I can get a finalized copy for you to take a look at. It won't have whether or not we can do the roof together, but it does have one little cool element attached to it that I'm pretty excited about. And then the next phase, you all can direct me however you want on that.
Okay. There's so many different plans out there on that other phase.
Yeah. I'll be more than happy to send you the latest for projection as well.
There's still that, I mean, if we push this back to start like a year later, is the issue with Amazon and all that, will that be resolved or no?
Well, hopefully, some of our, number one, businesses, construction business are already starting to call for projects, and it's not for this year, it's for the next year. I mean, people just aren't investing into major projects the way they were. So we already know locally that it's not quite as hot as it was 8 months ago with Amazon coming in. But our strategy is also to look outside of the tri-state region for bids. And that really came back to attack my memory when we did the lights. I mean, that company was actually from Bowling Green, but their bidding projects, or the number of projects were down, and they were able to do the install much cheaper than some of the places around here. So part of our strategy has been to access bids from places that are a little bit typically outside of our region that are struggling for projects even more than our local. So the more people bidding, the more competitive the process. The more competitive the process, the better our cost.
Okay. Anything else? Last call. Okay, all right.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
You
All right,
jump
so
on
I'm
that.
sending you new plans.